Correct, it's not pontoons. Although most of the pontoons, I did research some pontoons. I think the heaviest pontoon absent of the tour boats is the Lodge's boat, and I think it's about 3,800. So it would actually fit inside that.
Well, the prohibited water vessels that's proposed excludes pontoon boats.
Correct.
I mean, in the
Yes.
in the verbiage. And you mentioned the ballasts, which have been discussed, and we haven't done anything. And we sort of put up the red flag and waved it real hard when you shared with us that this new boat is coming out, that even without ballast, dry weight is
4,500
so
pounds.
much greater than what we have on here. I think we had identified a problem with some of those boats that were on the lake, and we're not proposing anything yet, but I think that might be something that we want to put on the LAB agenda to discuss further. Because we've had some incidents where there have been many tsunamis.
Well, I think the ballast boats are coming up because of the popularity of wake surfing. And we have discussed the ballast, and we've looked at, there's a couple of lakes that do a few different things. One of the biggest things is when you have one of these boats, I don't know if it's yearly, but the officer in charge goes out and makes sure that you don't have any ballast that you could add. The problem with that is today it could have ballast and somebody could add it tomorrow. And you've got probably 6 to 10 of these boats on the lake right now that I'm not sure we can really tell those people that they can't use it if they, when they bought them, it wasn't against the rules. I don't know if we can or not.
Well, we wouldn't say they can't use their boats, but we could
Ballast.
limit the amount of additional weight they add to that boat.
Another problem is that several of these boats use power fins on the bottom of the boat to do it, that weighs nothing. Basically to create more drag and create a bigger wake in that way.
Well, there's also nothing to prevent more of those boats being put on the lake. So again, that's my concern, that it be addressed, even if you say, well, the ones that are on the lake are grandfathered.
Right.
Another approach to it, and I agree with what Mary Ann's saying, because I think all of us are hearing a number of complaints about the size of some of these waves, would be to at least discuss the maybe addressing wake surfing. Address it from that standpoint rather than the ballast standpoint, or maybe even addition to.
Activity, I guess.
Yeah. And did you check the fireboat to see how much it weighs?
No, I did not.
Fireboat weighs almost 9,000 pounds.
I figured it would exceed.
John, the fireboat weighs almost 9,000 pounds.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you
You're
doing
welcome.
that for me. Yeah.
And it also exceeds our maximum
Length.
Yeah.
But I don't think we want to ban the fireboat.
But we'll have no wake surfing behind the fireboat, am I correct?
No, I don't think it creates a good enough wake.
One thing Mark just said that brought something to my attention, I think might need to be added in here, is he said with the pontoons, the heaviest one excluding the tour boats. That may be something you need to put in a provision here too, if they replace tour boats or something like that. I know at one time, or I don't know, but I've heard at one time when they put the tour boats on, the front of them had to be cut off to make the length measurement. Is it going to be the same with a weight measurement for that type of boat or that type of activity that's under concession with the town?
We've also discussed the load limit of passengers on those tour boats.
Right.
As people get heavier and more of them want to go on a tour, we don't want to have to weigh people as they get on the boat, but that has created a greater problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a forethought, it was just off of what he said, and I brought that up then.
The biggest thing, Mark, is obviously the size of the waves, and it's eating into the shore, and it's damaging people's boats and so forth. And would you all commit to giving some more discussion to that and coming up with some kind of recommendations how we can limit that?
Yeah.
You happy you showed up tonight?
Oh, big time, big time. Do you guys, as a council, do you think, I mean, how do you, I mean, my big concern is trying to tell people that purchase boats specifically because they wanted to surf behind them or whatever, if we were to make a rule that said no surfing on the lake, what kind of situations we would have with that.
Well, that's, all for, I don't think we have time to beat that out.
No, we don't.
Here, but that's, maybe y'all could toss that around at the committee and come up with something that would be fair.
People who had jet skis weren't happy when they were banned, but they were banned.
Yes.
And thought that people realize, I said, this lake isn't all that big, and I'm sure they really don't want to. If they knew that it was causing a problem, maybe most of them would want to take a second look at it anyway.
Well, we've talked about it, if everybody abided by, if you go out in this lake on the 4th of July or any busy summer day, there's a whole lot of people breaking the idle speed within 80 feet of anybody. Agreed? 75, I like 80. And in our meetings, we've discussed, if everybody was respectful of everybody else and actually followed those rules to a T, I'm not sure we'd have a whole lot of these problems.
Well, one thing with Mary Ann to talk about these tour boats is I still feel like controlling their speed would help tremendously.
Well,
Because they're so weighted, once they get up to speed, that's when that huge weight comes off of them. And I realize it takes longer for a tour, but I've been behind them several times, and when they get up there around 20, 25 miles an hour, that wake is tremendous, especially when they're fully loaded.
not that we're talking about tour boats right now, but I guess we are, but one of our meetings that was completely full of citizens, I've forgotten why everybody was there that day. The feeling I got from my committee and everybody in the group is that they should be idle speed all the way down this main channel.
Well, here again,
And I think if you asked my group, I think that would almost be a unanimous vote. But
we'd like to see a recommendation, because that wake is just as damaging as the one from these wet
well,
boats.
I do remember what it was about now. It was, but I think we have a contract with them, and in that contract, they're allowed to they have a map with a certain RPM range and all that other stuff. So I can't imagine that we can change it until 2017.
If we have the recommendation, we can make the modification when the contract renews.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Would you like me to put that also on my
Yes,
fantastic?
please. Because I really feel like I'll go behind them, and their wakes when they're loaded are tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all this time, they've been trying to maximize the amount of lake that can be toured in less than an hour.
Right.
To run everything on the hour, and that may be one of those paradigm shifts where the new contract is going to have to require hour-and-a-half tours.
Right, and maybe limit the number of people, like Mary Ann said, to keep whatever they've got now, if we can go 5 or 6 people less, would be more buoyancy as well.
And that's the kind of thing that could be hashed out in a compromise between the town and a concessionaire.
Right.
We might allow more boats, more tour boats, if they're less weighted and if they're going more slowly and taking longer tours, so that you could keep your revenue at about the same, but minimize your impact on the lake.
Can you handle that for us?
If I might interject one word here, as a proud
Better be
owner
more
of a
than one,
newly
Steve.
collapsed seawall, partially due to wake, I am all for this ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. Is that a motion?
No.
We're still in public hearing.
You got anybody
Are
else?
you guys done with me? I'd let her sit down before you put something else on my
I'm
plate.
thinking of something.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Have you got anybody else in the public hearing?
Nobody else is in the public hearing. Okay, moving on to item number 5, consider the adoption of the same resolution, amending section 1.52 of the lake use regulations. Any further discussion? I think we've had it. Do we have a motion regarding the 4,000-pound weight limit?
Mr. Weber,
No, what?
you want to make the motion?
Let's see, do I have to read the whole thing again?
No.
Or just a...
Just the number.
Huh?
You can read just the resolution number.
Okay, I make a motion that resolution number 16-01-12 be approved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I second it.
Second by Mary Ann. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, moving on to item number 6, public hearing, resolution number 16-01-12A, amending section 1.53 of the lake use regulations pertaining to the operations of non-motorized boats. And we have one speaker, George. Would you want to come forward, George? And everybody know George Nixon?
I know some of you I don't. My name is George Nixon. I live in Spartanburg. I've enjoyed our house at 208 Thomas Drive in Lake Lure for over 30 years. We have 4 children. We have 6 grandchildren. We've got 2 kayaks, a canoe, a paddleboard, a runabout, and a 22-foot electric launch. As I understand the motion that's coming up, it's in favor of keeping all non-motorized boats inside no-wake zones year-round, every day, all day, with the exception of sailboats and rowboats. My kayak I use for exercise, exploration, and relaxation. It's my time for solitude and contemplation, usually early in the morning. I go places. Each trip, I find little creeks, I see birds, I see animals, beautiful skies, and all of the beauty that Lake Lure has to offer. I ask that you do not take this part of Lake Lure away from me, of others who may have had similar experiences, and there are a lot of people that use this lake that way. Over my business and life experience, one of my favorite expressions has been, don't build a church for Easter Sunday. As I see this regulation, this is an Easter Sunday solution to an overcrowding sort of situation that may be 20 or 30 days on the lake. And these boaters, these non-motorcraft boaters, I don't think really contribute to the congestion problem on the lake. They've got a small footprint. They're generally out of the way. They're environmentally friendly, and they have no wake. I ask you to consider education, recommendation, and perhaps incentives before legislation to mitigate this problem that you see. And I don't know all of the sides of your problem you're discussing here. I will say that. Congestion seems to occur around the 3 primary rental sites for these crafts. My thought would be to provide recommended routes from each location that are safe, interesting, and generally within the no-wake zones. For instance, from town, very few of the kayaks and tour rental boats go up the river. They don't even know the river's there. It's a beautiful place to go. There are other places to go that are safe and avoid that bottleneck right in the channel. Make a recommendation that renters stay in the no-wake zone on weekends during busy hours. And that's the problem is when the people that don't know any better get out on the lake in the middle of the day and go out in the middle of the lake where it's really not safe. The next thing is consider expanding those wake zones around those locations where there is congestion of both motorized and non-motorized boats coming. And the prime example, I think, is town, where they've got 30 or 50 kayaks coming out. They're all of the rental slips, and Rumbling Bald is not much different. And the last thing is provide information on boating safety and rights of way for everybody that rents a boat. And beyond that, I would say for all of us, boating safety is critical. We must all know the basic right-of-way rules. I don't think we do particularly as a community. I think this should be on our website, and I think it should be a part of the handout that comes with each annual renewal of any motorized and non-motorized boat. And this also could include suggestions for non-motorized boats that, to help them be safe. My last point is this: should you pass this legislation, how will it be enforced? Do you really want to enforce this regulation? How much time is it worth to enforce this regulation? What penalties are fair? And my thought is, for the community that we've got and the regulations that we're responsible for upholding, I think we've got a lot more important issues than this one. So I encourage you to vote this down. And the very last thing I would say, sincerely, is I thank each of you for your service to this community. And I know you all put your best interest in Lake Lure top of the docket. Thanks.
Very good. Any questions for George before he, because
I do.
Very well presented, George, and it's
Thank you, George. In my understanding of what we're proposing, I'm trying to envision how this would change your ability to explore the lake.
I can't get across the lake
Yes, you can.
if I go all the way around it.
No.
Okay,
It
well, I
says
don't know
right
that-
here, except when crossing the lake.
Okay, I have not read that part of the regulation. I could
Okay.
not find it on the website, so I
Yeah,
heard.
you would cross directly. You would come out of the wake zone and cross, straight
Okay,
across.
maybe I should listen to the amendment
it's
first,
just,
but.
it's perpendicular.
But in all sincerity, I could not find access to it on the website. I
Okay,
just heard,
I understand, and I hear what you're saying, and let me just read: all non-motorized boats, excluding sailboats and rowing shells, shall stay within the 75 feet offshore or within the no-wake zone, which is in any cove, except when crossing the lake.
okay, that part of it, I was not aware of, and I can agree with that. It
So
makes sense to me.
I'm thinking what we're trying to do is keep, we've had so many, how much has it increased? Somebody would know, I don't know, but it's
What's the
like
increase in those y'all talked about it yesterday?
We've got our specialist right here.
We did increase over 400% in the last 10 years.
The number of non-motorized boats permitted on the lake.
Permitted on the lake, and as far as deliveries go, we have over 9,000 hours of rented boats from deliveries each year.
And as Dean pointed out to me today, depending on whether it's winter or summer, the hours after 9 o'clock until whatever time in the morning, the whole lake is no wake.
Say that again?
There's no wake after 9 o'clock at night.
It's depending on the part of the year. Right now,
Yeah.
it's from
Okay.
7 at night till 7 in the morning. In a few months, it'll be from 9 at night till 7 in the morning, so that means the entire lake's open to the non-motorized in those hours.
And I think the biggest problem, one of them addressing, is the kayaks or canoes get in the middle of the lake, and they just stop. Well, if the speedboats are going by, they're
I
off.
just don't think you can legislate stupid.
You're right.
And I totally agree, but that's the issue, and that's the other reason allow crossing is, once
Yeah, but,
once
okay.
you start crossing, we just want people to keep crossing instead of just sitting and hanging out for an hour out there. So that's probably one of the biggest drivers of it, because being in a speedboat, and the other thing is they're hard to see. These kayaks, if you're in a speedboat doing 20 miles an hour, which is not fast, my eyes are constantly on the water. That's, if I'm towing a skier, I tell my wife to watch the skier. I'm searching for paddle boards and because they're extremely hard to see, especially coming into the sun or something like that. So,
Especially the paddle boards, and if they fall off the paddle board, there's nothing to see.
right, so the biggest thing is somebody's crossing, let's get across, not just sit there and you got 2 or 3 on each side. You dodge this one, and next thing you know, that one's over there, so.
Relative to the rented non-motorized boats, this recommendation comes now after the Lake Advisory Board has, over the past couple of years, tried a number of the very things, George, that you recommended, and those were good suggestions that through encouragement, the board was hoping that Rumbling Ball Resort and a couple of the other livery rentals would be able to better coach and provide orientation and recommendations. And year after year, summer after summer, the board was observing very little change, and people getting their kayak and their paddle and their vest and going straight out in the middle of the lake and hanging out. So I think part of the thought is enforcement will be somewhat difficult, and you'll never get complete compliance with this, but this would give Dean a tool to be able to go back to principally those rental homes and those livery businesses and say, there is a threat of penalty here, and maybe that would get behaviors to change. Dean, you can speak to, the likelihood that you'd really be engaged in a lot of enforcement activity on your average homeowner around here.
Well, I think they brought up at the meeting last night the number of citations written to the number of warnings. Now, our approach is to educate. So,
I'm aware of that, and I appreciate that.
Our goal is to get out here. But now we've got, before we could educate them and say it's safer if you stay in the no-wake zone, but it's not required. Now we can actually have teeth in a law that says you need to be in the no-wake zone. It is now a law, and it gives us a little more flexibility there. But it'll be focused on education of these boaters.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Anybody else to speak on it?
yeah, there hasn't anybody else was signed up. Anybody else want to speak on it? Okay.
I wanted to ask Mr. Helms some questions on this.
Please do.
You want me up there, Steve?
Yeah, please.
Fantastic.
Oh, and I'm looking at the proposed language,
Yes.
where it says all non-motorized boats. I'm thinking back to the day that I saw 3 kids in an inner tube paddling across the lake, and the parents making circles around them in the pontoon boat before they went off to Larkins to eat. And it thundering and lightning at the same time. Now,
Was that Bob?
No, that's probably Mark.
all non-motorized boats. How do we change that to include all non-motorized watercraft, maybe? Because you also have the paddle boards.
Well, you also have a surfboard, you can
Well,
have anything, a floaty,
Do we make it all non-motorized watercraft or just the boats?
I
Yes.
think it needs to be called vessel.
If they're,
Okay,
Vessel.
let me.
is a surfboard a vessel?
If they're either swimming or they're in a boat, and either way, you can't be out in the middle, so you're covered either way, whether they're swimming in an inner tube, or the guy can say, oh, no, this is my boat, okay, well, fine, you can't have it out here either.
okay, paddleboard,
Yeah.
vessel.
Are we talking about flotation devices?
Can we,
Well, that's my whole question, seriously.
Yeah.
well, let's clarify what, I think I know, but I'm going to ask Dean, put him on the spot. I think if you're swimming in the lake, you have to be a certain distance from a boat or shore.
No more than 50 from a boat.
Yeah.
Blaine was spitting it all out. So that would include, if you have a flotation device on, I mean, that would still mean you would need to be within 50 feet of a boat or
I
shore.
understand that. And you're probably gearing that towards the inner tube. What about the paddle boards, which you're standing up on, paddling across the lake?
Those are
Only when crossing.
A boat. Come on, Mark,
Right.
is that considered a boat under this definition? What do we have that requires those non-motorized paddle boards to stay within that 75-foot boundary?
Okay, it is permitted as a non-motorized vessel.
Vessel.
Okay,
And there's a separate section of definitions in the lake use regulations.
Should
that
we
define
say-
vessel and boat. and-
should we say non-motorized vessels in here, or boats?
I'd say
We
probably
can say
both.
boats or vessels.
Say both, yeah.
And the the state of North Carolina also classifies a stand-up paddleboard as a non-motorized vessel. They enforce it with the life jacket. If they're out after dark, it has to be a light, so they enforce it exactly, or they classify it exactly the same as a kayak.
Was it the LAB's intent that those be included in this definition?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we should change this possibly to boats and, all non-motorized boats and vessels?
And/or vessels.
Yeah.
I think that would be
You
fine.
should look at the definition in there, because I think it's synonymous. I think vessels is defined back as boats and some other things. Andy, can you pull that regulation up?
Yeah.
The definition section?
I mean, I want to make sure we capture the objective of what we're trying to do here and include everything that the board intended.
I think our
Be
objective,
included.
yeah, I think our objective, and what we've seen for several years is in general, during the day, during the summer season, we've got too many of them out there. And I say, and Chris is right, I mean, 2 years ago, we made a sticker that went on every commercial non-motorized boat that said, hey, when you're crossing, you need to stay in groups, you need to not spread out, and you need to only.
I remember all that,
Right.
and I know the Lake Operations and Lake Advisory Board has made great efforts to educate non-motorized vessel and boat operators on the safety and the requirements. And now this is another step we're having to go because it hadn't worked so well. I'm not opposed to the ordinance. I just want to make sure that we capture what you intended
That was the intent.
in the ordinance.
Andy, what'd you find?
It's, in the definitions of lake, boat, it says, boat. For the purpose of these regulations, the term boat shall mean any form of water vessel. And that's in lake use regulations.
Okay, so it's covered.
Okay, all right. Got it. Thank you.
Don't change it.
Okay. Anything
So-
else for Mark?
No, that's all I needed. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm serious.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 7, consider adoption of same resolution. Any further discussion?
Well, I'd just like to say, on the except when crossing the lake, I talked to Dean because I could foresee problems with enforcement. He didn't feel at this time that we needed to anticipate that problem until it raises its ugly head. I felt like maybe we needed to define what crossing the lake constitutes, that you were in motion, and this has been discussed in the LAB, perpendicular to shore and these kinds of words, but then we just sort of dropped it all. And unless that becomes a problem, but I just wanted to mention that because if we find people just saying, oh, because it says except when crossing the lake, they're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, that could be a problem.
Well, as a practical matter, most people aren't going to know what the ordinance says anyway. They're going to rely on Dean out there and what they're told, that, you're supposed to go straight across the lake. And if Dean sees them in the middle of the lake, not going straight across the lake, you probably want to stop and say, hey, you should need to be going across the lake. And they say, why do I have to do that? So, well, because there's a regulation number, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll, 99 out of 100, I guess, will quit. And the one that doesn't, then you'll write them a ticket and they'll come and they need to pay it or come before this board. Right.
So essentially, if you see them doing this, you're going to stop them, but if they're doing that, you're okay.
Well, it's not going to be an exact science, but if
Got
I
it.
see that they're motivating over and they're trying to go, I may watch it for a little bit, but not going to go entice it. But if I see them stopping or hanging out or, just see what the factors are, then I'll go up and say, you actually have to operate in the non-wake areas and, just educate them on what the rulings and stuff are.
Do we need to do a cheap handout, just to typed up something and hand it with a permit or anything?
Yeah, we can explore that. Dean and I will work on that, and we can look at, do we want to do it just for the commercial non-motorized or for all non-motorized? But yeah, that's easy.
Just,
Yeah,
you know,
it makes
just a
sense
regular
with the
piece-
change in the law.
Yeah, just regular piece of paper, nothing fancy.
This says all non.
Just when they get their
Yeah.
permit, they get that piece of paper, and at least you can say, hey, when you got your permit, you got.
Here says no.
Well, one thing I would say, and when you get a permit now, you are offered a pamphlet. And on that pamphlet, it has all these things that we are recommending.
Right.
And, you still can't make people read it.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
since we've changed it, would be time to update them now.
As we give out the new ones, it would be good if Linda or whoever gives them to them, so there's some changes this year, you probably would want to read this.
Right, because the pamphlets we're handing out do not say you must stay in the non-motorized area. So this would be a good thing to add with that, to say there is a change in regulations from what you're seeing.
It'd make it that much better, but more obvious if we just print out a little card or a sheet and stick it in there and say, here's a regulation that was added since this pamphlet was printed.
Exactly.
Good. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, okay?
Can I ask, Mr. Nixon, does all of this make a little more sense after hearing the discussion and the intent?
It does make sense, and I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right.
Okay, could I call for a motion if there's no further discussion?
I will make a motion that we adopt the resolution number 16-01-12A.
And with the addition of and/or vessel, or do you want to?
That's not necessary because the definition takes care of that.
Okay. Motion made, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bob. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Are there any other issues that we should be discussing today? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Bob,
I second that.
second by John. All in favor?
John tries to beat me.
Okay, well,
Mary Ann?
he hadn't said too much, so.
Oh, did he? I didn't even hear that. That's what I thought. You said it. If I did, I didn't hear it. Okay, I vote in favor of that motion. Oh.